מסכת בבא בתרא דף ס"ח נו משנה המוכרת העיר מכר בתים ברות שכין ומערות מרחסאות ושובחות בית הבדין ובית השלחין אבל לא את המטלטלין. Someone sells a city. Now generally cities are just public areas, but there is such a thing as a privately owned city, like nowadays someone goes and buys an island or has a big estate that is like the size of a city. So this is a personally owned city, and he's selling to someone else the entire city. In that case, certainly he owns the airspace, the public space and the streets of the city, that's for sure. This Mishnah teaches that he also includes the houses, the pits, the ditches, the caves, the bathhouses, the dovecotes, the olive presses, and bet hashlachin are the fields, as we're going to discuss further, that are around the city that provide food for the city. So all those things are included because they're all part of a city. These are standard institutions, buildings, and fields, things that are used for the city dwellers. However, all these things are permanent structures, part of the land, or permanent buildings. However, this will not include movable objects. That's not included in the sale. ובזמן שמר לו היא וכל מה שבתוכה, אפילו היו בה בהמה ועבדים, הרי כולן מכורין. However, if I sell you this city and I add everything that's in it, then that does include movable items. When we say movable items, we're talking about things that are, again, used for residence, like ovens and stoves and mills and things like that. We're not talking about personal items like food and clothing. Now, this comes to include even animals and slaves. Those animals and slaves that are within the city, those are also included in the sale. The Gemara will discuss why it says afilu here and explain this is even though they move by themselves. Not only are they movable items like an oven, which is what a person can move. These move by themselves, and yet so they're super movable, and yet they are also included within the city. If you say the city and everything in it, those are included. All that was Tanakama. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, HaMocher et ha'ir machar et hasantar. Rashbag adds that if you sell a city, you also sell, this is an official, like a land official. Santar might be Greek or Latin. Notice it sounds the same as senator. So this is a tax official or land official, a registrar. So he comes along with the city because his services are essential to the proper running of the city. Gemara. אמר לרב אחא ברד רב אביה לרב אשה, שמעת מינה עבדה כמטלטלה דמה, דאי כמקרקעה דמה, נזדבן אגב מתה. Now, in general, throughout Shas, there's a discussion about the status of an Eved Kena'ani, a non-Jewish slave. Are they treated like a movable object or like land? On the one hand, they move, so they're more like a movable object. On the other hand, for various laws like inheritance, and the way one acquires it, so they also have a status for many things like land. So this is a general discussion. And so here, Rav Acha, the son of Rav Avia, tells Rav Asher, we can learn from this Mishnah and conclude that a Canaanite slave is like a movable object, because if it were like land, then it should be automatically included in the sale of the city. Even if I just say, I'm selling you the city, I don't say anything else. So that includes the land and everything attached to the land. And if slaves were like land, then slaves would be included. But this Mishnah says that slaves are not included unless you add also everything in the city, which would include movable items. So then it includes movable items and slaves. So we see here that slaves are like movable items. So is this a proper conclusion? We're going to reject it. Velamai avda kemetaltele dame mai afilu. So what do you want to say? That slaves are like movable items? If so, then what is the word afilu that it says here? It says if you add the phrase everything that's in it, then even animals and slaves. Why say even? If they're just like movable items, then just say then everything is included, and just say metaltelin. And so I don't need the word afilu, right? That afilu is coming to add something different. So what's the word afilu? Well, if you say that slaves are movable objects, then the word afilu is coming to teach that you might have thought that there is a difference between movable items that move on their own and movable items that don't move on their own. And that's why it says afilu. What's included in the sale if I add everything in the city? Of course, movable items that don't move on their own, they're more stationary, ovens and mills and things like that. But even things that move on their own are also included. So you see the word afilu is coming to, recognizes a distinction between two types of metaltelin. So no matter what, even if you say that the slaves are like movable items, you see that the Mishnah would be distinguishing between two types. Now, with that in mind, we can go back to say that slaves are actually like land and still fit it into the Mishnah. Afilu tem abda kemekarka adame, shaneh ben mekarka denayid lemekarka de la nayid. You could say here too, in general, slaves are like land for other laws. And here, it's different because there's a distinction between land that moves on its own and land that does not move on its own. Land that does not move on its own, that's talking about regular land, actual land. I mean, an earthquake, I guess it can move, but we're not talking about that. So land that doesn't move on its own, that's included in the standard sale, even when you don't say anything. Whereas land, meaning Canaanite slaves that are like land for other halachot, but because they move on their own, that's why for this purpose of a sale, they are in a category, they are not included in the sale. If you don't say anything, only if you add extra words, everything that's in it, then this is also included, even this, which is land that is movable. The point is that this Mishnah is distinguishing between slaves and animals and all other things with the word afilu. And so even if whether you say it's that slaves are like karka or like metaltelin, you're still going to have to show some distinction between slaves and those other things. So even if you say it's metaltelin, the word afilu comes to say even though they move on their own. Fine, once you know that, you can say it's like karka, and the point is, karka that moves on its own has a different law than regular karka. Okay, so we conclude that we cannot derive from this Mishnah the solution to the general problem of what is the status of Canaanite slave, like land or metaltelin. It could go either way. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Hamocher et ha'ir machar et ha'santar. My santar. So Rashbag disagrees with Tanakama, and he says that if I sell the land, the city, it includes this santar. What is santar? We're going to see two opinions. Hachat hargimu bar machavanita. So here, meaning in Bavel, they translate it to mean the registrar, the person that's in charge of keeping track of the property boundaries and who owns what, and I guess who owes what also, perhaps in taxes. So it's talking about an actual person. He comes along with the sale of the city. Shimon ben Av Tolmos Omer Bageh. However, Shimon ben Av Tolmos says it's talking about land, fields that are surrounding the city, that serve the people in the city. That's what Rashbag is adding, that those are also included in the sale. Manda mar bar machavanita kol sheken bageh. Manda mar bageh aval bar machavanita la mizdaban. Now, according to the opinion that says that santar means the registrar, so then all the more so the fields themselves. In other words, the fields themselves are more important than the guy who keeps track of the fields. So, if you say that the guy who keeps track of the fields is included in the sale, then all the more so the fields themselves are included in the standard sale. However, according to the second opinion that says santar means the fields, so that means only the fields are sold along with the city, according to Rashbag, but the registrar is not included in the sale, not even according to Rashbag. Good. Tenan. Bet habadim ubet hashelachin. So now in our Mishnah, I mentioned that olive presses and bet hashlachin, some kind of field, is sold along with the city. So now we have to correlate this phrase in the Mishnah with either of these two opinions about what the santar is. Sabru amay shelachin bageh. So right now we're assuming that shelachin means fields. Shelachin elsewhere means an irrigated field. Right here, now we're just using it to talk about any type of field. So shelachin is already a field, and that's already included in the Tanakama's list. of items that are included in the sale of a city. Now, how do you know that shalachin means a field? Dichtiv v'sholech mayim al penei chusot, a pasuk in Yov that says Hashem sends rain and sends water upon the upon chutzot, upon the fields. So this sholeach is referring to sending rain, and that's on a field. So this is talking about something that accepts and needs rain and needs irrigation. So that's how you know shalachin means a field. Bishlama lemandamar bar machavanita amar tanakama bage mizdabene bar machavanita la mizdaban v'ata rabban Shimon ben Gamliel memar afilu bar machavanita name mizdaban. So I understand, according to the opinion, the first opinion, the one in Bavel, that says the Santad is a registrar. So then the Mishnah reads smoothly. The Tanakama says that fields, that's the Bet HaShlachin, are sold with the city, whereas the registrar is not. And then Rashba comes and argues, and he says, no, I think that not only the fields, but even the registrar also is included in the sale of the city. But according to the second opinion that says that Santar means a field, so now Tanakama already said that fields are included when he said Bet HaShlachin. So then what's the difference between Tanakama and the Rashbag? Answer: Mi sabarat mai shelachin bage la mai shelachin ginuniyata shenemar shelachayich pardes rimonim. Oh, did you think that shelachin means a field? No, it does not mean that. Rather, it means gardens. Field is where you grow grain. Gardens is where you grow fruits and vegetables. That's what it's talking about. As it says in Shir Hashirim, your shoots are an orchard of pomegranates. So here it says shelachayich, that's the same word as shelachin, and it describes it as orchards and orchard of pomegranates. So that's where a place where you grow fruits and vegetables. Aval bageh la mizda bene v'taraban Shimon ben Gamliel lememad afilu bageh na mizda bene. So we see that according to Tanakama, the orchards, gardens are included in the sale, but not fields. And then Rashbag comes to say, you know what? I think even fields, and that's the word santad means fields. So then you can make sense of the Mishnah. So we answered the question. In fact, we can read the Mishnah smoothly, both according to the opinion that santad is a registrar and according to the opinion that santad is a field. All that is one version of this understanding of the Mishnah. Ika de Amre, a whole other version. Savruha, Maishalachin Ginuniyata. They thought to say at first that Shalachin in the Mishnah is referring to gardens. So now we're starting with the garden assumption, and then we'll change it. Bishlam alamanda amar bage amar tanakama ginuniyata mizdaban bage la mizdaban v'ata rabban Shimon ben Gamliel memad afilu bage mizdabene. So now we understand this Mishnah and read smoothly according to the opinion that says Santad means fields. In that way, Tanakama says that if you sell a city, as a standard, without any extra formulation, then the gardens are sold. And gardens are generally within the city, so the gardens certainly will be sold, whereas the fields that are more outside of the city are not sold. And then Rashbag comes and says, you know what? I think even the fields. But in fact, nobody's talking about the registrar. So then it goes one step to another. Fields are one step beyond the gardens. The registrar is a step beyond that. And so Tanakama says gardens, yes, fields, no. Rashbag says even the fields. That's fine. Ela lemanda amar bar machavanita amar Tanakama ginuniyata umada le Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel bar machavanita. So according to the opinion that says a santad means a registrar, so then there's a jump in the Mishnah. It does not read smoothly. Tanakama says that gardens are included in the sale, so that would mean that not fields and certainly not a registrar. And then Rashbag follows up and says, oh, a registrar is included in the sale. But what about fields? That's an excluded middle here. And he should have, if he argues on fields, he should have just said that the field is included, and all the more so, a registrar. So this does not read smoothly. So we answer, Misabarat mai shalachin ginuniyata la mai shalachin baged ichti b'sholech maim al penei chosot. oh, did you think that shelachin means a garden? No, in fact, it means a field, as the pasuk says back in Iyov, that Hashem sends water upon fields. And you see the word sholech, that's bet hashlachin. Aval bar macha vanita la mizdaban v'ata rabban Shimon ben Gamliel lememar tafilu bar macha vanita nami mizdaban. So according to that, Tanakama says shelachin, meaning fields, are included in the sale, but the registrar is not. And then the Rashba comes and says that the registrar, even he is included in the sale, and then that reads smoothly. Okay, so we're just switching around the order of the assumptions in this version compared to the previous version. Next, Tashema. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Santar eno machur, an kol mus machur. Now we have another braita that refers to Santar again here, and here it's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that says, if you sell a city, then the Santar is not included, but the city scribe is included. There's a city scribe, and everybody goes to him for all of their contracts and deeds and everything. So he's essential to the city functioning and is included automatically within the sale. So it doesn't make sense that since an kolmos, you see the word kolmos here, which means a reed that he writes with. So if that is referring to a person, a professional, so then santar also is referring to a person. So then that makes sense if you say santar is a person. But if you say santar is a field, well then how can you read Rabbi Yehuda nicely, right? It makes sense that they're both people. And we answer, Midi idya, hakediita, hakediita. No, who says that you're comparing the two? Maybe the Yehuda is talking about two different things, and he says, Santad, meaning a field, is not sold, and a city scribe is sold. Who says they have to be the same category of items? Maybe the Yehuda is simply talking about two different items. ומי מסית אמרת אחי, והקטני שפה, אבל לא שיריה ולא בנותיה ולא חורשין המוקסין לה, ולא בברין של חיה ושל עופות ושל דגים. ואמרינן, מי שיריה ביזלה, מי ביזלה, אמר רבי אבא פסקי בגה. פסקי בגה הוא דלה מזדבנה, הבגה עצמן מזדבנה. Can you really say that Santar means a field, and that means, according to the Yehuda, it's not included in the sale? Look at the continuation of that very baraita that says, so the beginning of it was, the Yehuda says that the Santar is not sold, so we're understanding that means a field. A field is not sold. However, the Kolimos, the city scribe, is sold. And then it continues and says, however, you know what's not sold? The remnants of the field and its suburbs. Shiyadeha remnants, this is other pieces of field that are not directly attached to the fields that directly surround the city. So you have the city, you have fields that are right there. And so it is assuming that the fields are included if it says that the other strips of land that are next to those fields are not included. So this is already the contradiction. How can you say that the Yehuda says that the fields, if Santar means field, is not included in the sale, and then why would you have to say that the strips are also not included? That's all the more so. Okay, we'll get to the question in a second. Let's just finish the rest of the braita. And also, not its daughters means the suburbs of the town, right? I'm selling you a town. You only get the main part of the town and not the little suburbs. And not the wooded areas that are set aside, woods, forests that are set aside for the usage of that town are not included. And also enclosures for animals or birds or fish are not included in the sale. And that's the end of that section of the baraita. Now, we explained, what is shiyareha? It's remnants. It's bizle. Okay, what's bizle? So the Abba says this is talking about strips of field that are separated from the main fields. So, by the way, bizle, I don't know if it's related to the Israeli snack, bizli, which is little strips of snacks that are bite-sized, maybe. Anyway, the point is here that if the piske bageh, if the pieces of fields are not included in the field, then certainly the field itself is sold is included in the sale. Otherwise, why would you have to say that the strips of the field are not included? That means the main field is included. And therefore, that poses a difficulty for the opinion that says Santar is a field, because if Yehuda says a field itself is not sold, then all the more so, the strip of field is also not sold. There would be no need to say that. So our answer is Ipuch Rabbi Yehuda Omer Santar Machur an Kolmos Eno Machur. Okay, we got the wrong version. Let's flip it around. And Rabbi Yehuda actually says that Santar, so we're continuing with the meaning of a field, is sold, but the city scribe is not sold. And then this makes sense. The Rabbi Yehuda is saying that a main field that's connected to the city is sold along with the sale of the city, but the strips are not. Okay, good. So that reads smoothly. However, Umi Masit Amart, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Sabir Aleh, according to this, Rabbi Yehuda and Rashbag both agree. They both say that a santar, meaning a field, is included within the sale of the city. So, can we say that Rabbi Yehuda and Rashbag are in agreement against Tanakama, who says that fields are not included in a standard sale of a city? Can't be. We see from the following baraita that regarding a related issue, Rabbi Yehuda is like Rabbanan and disagrees with Rashbag. Dekatani sefa. Aval lo shiyareha velo benoteha. Vilu Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel ha'amar machar et ha'ir machar benoteha. Detanya hamocher et ha'ir lo machar et benoteha. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer hamocher et ha'ir machar benoteha. The sefa of the baraita above that was talking about the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda says that the strips of land are not included and the suburbs are not included. So Rabbi Yehuda says suburbs are not included. However, according to Rashbag, he says that if you sell a city, the suburbs are included, and that we know from yet another baraita that says if someone sells a city, the suburbs are not included. That's the Tanakama. Rashbag, however, says if you sell a city, the suburbs are included. So you can't say that Rabbi Yehuda is the same as Rashbag, because you hear regarding the suburbs, he is not like Rashbag. So the answer is a simple answer. Rabbi Yehuda sabar la kevate bechada ufaleg ala be'ale bechada. These are two different issues, and Rabbi Yehuda can agree with Rashbag on one issue regarding fields. They are in agreement. Both Rabbi Yehuda and Rashbag say that if you sell a city, the fields are included, even though they disagree about a different matter. When it comes to the suburbs, there, Rabbi Yehuda thinks that the suburbs are not included, like Tanakama, whereas Rashbag thinks that the suburbs are included. So just because he agrees on one point, it still means he can disagree on another point. They don't have to be in agreement with everything, and thereby we answer that question. Finally, velo bebarin shel chaya v'shel ofot v'shel dagim. That baraita said that if I sell a city, then the enclosures for animals, birds, and fish are not included. Urminhi hayula banot en nimkarot ima. Hayala chelek ehad bayam vechelek ehad bayabasha. Ve'abarin shel haya v'shel ofot v'shel dagim. Hare elu nimkarim ima. We have a contradiction from another baraita that says if the city has daughters, meaning if there's suburbs, then those are not included in the sale. And if part of the city was in the sea and part of it on dry land, so it was maybe some kind of island or something that the water comes in and out, high tide and low tide, and so part of it is in the water and part of it is out of the water. That's the second case. So that isn't these that will be included, and also the enclosures for animals, birds, and fish. These things are included within in the sale of the city. So how can we explain this contradiction that the baraita above says that enclosures for animals are not included within the sale, and here it says that they are included within the sale? La kasha ha d'negiach ka'ihi lego ha veha d'negiach ka'ihi lebar. No, there's no problem. One baraita is talking about where the enclosure is facing inwards, facing towards the city. That's this last baraita. So since the opening is facing within the city, so that's for the usage of the city that they want to go and get a bird. And so that's considered part of the city. Whereas the baraita above is talking about where the opening is away from the city. So that's considered a separate domain and is not included in the sale of the city. Fakatane velo et chorashin hamuksin la. Emma hamuksin hemena. Hold on, in the baraita above it says, and not the woods that are set aside for it. So just like where it says for the woods that are set aside for the city, so that sounds like they are set aside for the usage of the city, it would make sense that the next item on that list about the enclosures are also for the city, and therefore it should be included within the sale of the city, meaning that, it sounds like the opening is towards the city. So how can you say that that previous Baraita is talking about a case where the opening is facing outwards? That doesn't make sense. And so we say, you know what, we'll have to reread, in fact, the forest case also, and say it's not talking about that it's set aside, mukseh, for the city, but rather set aside apart from the city, meaning the entrance to those woods is away from the city, and so too that would make sense that the entrance to the enclosures for the animals in that baraita is also away from the city, and so we resolved all of the contradictions. Baruch Adonai leolam, amen ve'amen.